We got a thumbs up now. All right, this is our work session. I'd like to welcome everyone. This is in preparation for our meeting of November 1, which is going to be obviously our first meeting in November. We're getting down to the end of the year, so we've got like 4 meetings left. This is amazing. This year has just flown by. So I'll call this meeting to order, and we have 2 presentations. First one is going to be Mr. Kemp. He's going to be providing us the plans for the Main Street and Lampkin Street utility improvements. And then kind of on the heels of that, we'll be followed with folks from Kimley Horn, who are going to give us the latest and greatest on the schematic design for Main Street, which kind of ties in with what Edward is doing. So with that being said, Mr. Kemp, you go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to be here, and I promise we won't use up too much time talking about the things that people will probably never see again, hopefully. But things that are very important, things that we're passionate about. We're really excited to talk about this because we're reaching a milestone as far as the life of this project, asking for authorization to advertise on this upcoming meeting. So we'll be going out for bids, and just kind of wanted to bring the board fully up to date on where we are, what the final plans look like, and kind of what the next steps look like today. So really, if you want to take a step back, the history of this project really predates when any of us were really here. And I think, Mayor, started with, we said, hey, we really need to think about overlaying Main Street. It's been a long time since we've done that. We went back and looked at it. That evolved into this discussion about what Main Street can look like. Let's make sure that the infrastructure associated with Main Street was in great tip-top shape before we made these major investments on the street. So I think about 3 years ago, this project, 2 to 3 years ago, this project was added to our capital improvement list. And again, we're following these forward-looking focus. Future focus is what our tagline is, and our renewed principles, where we're really thinking about the future as it relates to infrastructure. We obviously have to be reactive and address issues that as they come up day to day, but we're also trying to plan and position ourselves well in the future. And that's kind of what this project falls into that category. So in the history of the project, we identified that this is something that we needed to do. We forged ahead from a utility standpoint, evaluated all the water infrastructure there downtown. That included Lampkin Street, some of the side streets, and all the area as part of the streetscape project. We not only wanted to look at existing infrastructure capacity, what was here right now, to make sure that we could continue to serve that, but also what it would look like in the future as downtown hopefully continues to grow, that capacity and demand goes up. So here today we're going to present the final plans. I have with me Kirk Mills, who works for Kimley Horn. He and his team have been working on this from the beginning, and he's going to talk a little bit more in depth about the plans themselves. It does include also some areas of sewer, and he will talk about those. So this is really a water focus, but also includes sewer, and he'll talk a little bit about how those specific sewer areas were selected and the reasons why. I have to my left here a very familiar face, but a new face to Starkville Utilities, Mary Williams. She is our capital projects manager, and she's going to talk a little bit about our communication plan, how we want to get the word out to all the existing businesses, property owners there. We want to be very proactive in our communication to keep everybody abreast of what's going on, set the expectations, and also keep an open line if there are issues that they move to contact. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
Well, before you do that, you touched on water and sewer. This should also include an electrical upgrade, right?
So the electrical upgrades will be really more part of the streetscape project, and at that time, that will be incorporated when they do that.
Okay, well, I know we want to be able to do more or have a greater draw of electrical capability for bands or whatever it is for downtown, so.
Right.
Okay.
I've discussed that with Jeff Atwell,
Okay.
who will be helping do the design with the streetscape team.
Right.
He is aware of what that future design looks like, and I think that will be very easy to accommodate as part of the streetscape project.
Okay.
I think once we get past the schematic design phase is when Jeff was really going to get involved and engaged on what that looks like. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's gonna look a whole lot different than what's there right now, other than providing future capabilities to upgrade some services for additional loads in the future, such as fast charging stations, or maybe adding some different entertainment venue hookup points and things.
Okay, so the capacity's there. I just know that at one point in time, Jason Horner said that we had a small way to put it through there, and we needed a larger capacity to put more wires or capability amps, whatever, watts, amps, whatever.
And I think that the next discussion, once we get to the schematic design, is what do we really envision from an entertainment or from a special event standpoint, and where are those specific points, where they need to be, what is the capacity associated with it? Obviously, Bulldog Bash was a much different type of event than, say, something more small
Pumpkin
scale,
Palooza.
Pumpkin Palooza, something small scale in front of the main city hall.
No, I just want to make sure that's still,
Yes. Yeah.
okay,
We're-
all
I
right,
think
sorry.
that's the plan, and I feel like that conversation will happen pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, they're on our team, they're part of the process. We've been really focusing on the lighting layout, and making sure we've got the right number, and then spacing, and then we'll engage them. in
Okay,
details.
great, thank you.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Kurt now. He's gonna talk a little bit about the project plan itself. Feel free to interject or ask questions as we go along. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you, Edward.
Yep.
I'm gonna stand up and point stuff. We're not gonna zoom in and go through in great detail, but we did want to just give you a pretty good overview. As Edward mentioned, this is some of the oldest infrastructure, underground infrastructure of the city. So the conversation started, especially with the road project on the horizon. What do we need to do to renew that? And started talking about just water and sewer infrastructure, which really extended from City Hall, where we are, all the way down to Montgomery, and then 2 blocks, Lincoln and Main. Kind of looping that with new water mains to replace old, and then we'll talk briefly about sewer as well. As we got into it, a portion from Montgomery back to Jackson, we determined had already been upgraded. So we pulled that out of the project. No need to replace a pipe that's relatively new and sufficient in capacity. The other piece, while I've got this up, we did some preliminary planning, some modeling. The existing mains, water mains, there were 2 running down Main Street, 2 in Lambkin. And we were able to model that condition with the demands that Edward was talking about, future demands, and consolidate that into 1 main replacement that could meet that need. So we're not going back and replacing in kind, we're replacing with 1 main that's sufficient to carry that and meet that demand capacity. Additionally, while I've got the map up, a lot of these buildings on Main Street are not served from Main Street. So you won't walk down the sidewalk and see meter cuts in the sidewalk. They're all behind the buildings. So we're reinforcing some of that, replacing some mains behind the buildings to clean that up a little bit too. And as we tie in new meters, we're standardizing a little bit with the new meter program that Starkville Utilities has.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah, sure.
That's really important, because that is a very direct impact to the customers and basically their front door. So Mary's gonna talk a little bit about that, but I think that the amount of impact to the existing businesses from the utility-related project, we hope is minimal.
And this is going to take care of the issue we experienced with the fire on Washington, where we had a little pressure issues, is that correct?
This will set the stage for additional extensions
Okay.
down Washington or Lafayette or those areas.
What's the size of the pipe going down Main, the new pipe, what are
We had started with a 10, but I'll talk about it now. We're gonna put in a 12, which will further allow that condition to be met, but some of that is due to the supply chain. 12 is more available. Putting it in is not a lot different than a 10 from a cost standpoint. So trying to address supply chain issues, but keep the project advancing rather than just stay with an odd size and wait it out.
What size line would be in the alleys where you connect to these businesses? Or is that you gonna replace that also? You talking about?
Some of them, yes, some of them behind Main Street, and I can't recall the size,
City.
that's probably near City. That would be the Main and Lampkin and the loop, the reinforcement mains are 12.
What is this, tell us about the section you said it doesn't need replacing, it's on between Main and Montgomery and
It's
Jackson.
a EDC 10-inch line, it was put
It was
in.
put in about 15 years ago. We went
And that's
back-
on University between Main and Jackson, or Main Street between
Yeah,
Main
and,
and Jackson.
guy was Doug Devlin, who's a former public works director, and he confirmed that. We also field verified that material and size due to a water issue that we had right there at Caldwell Street where we dug that up. It was right adjacent to the main. It was not on that particular line, it was on the line that runs down Caldwell. But while we were there, we went ahead and excavated.
So there wasn't any problems with that 10-inch main when you
No.
went for that?
And so that's what Herb said, when we started the design and evaluating it, it became clear to us that this particular pipe had modern materials installed relatively recently, and there was no need to upgrade that.
So it'll increase to a 12 when you get to
Correct.
Jackson Street?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Well, let me ask, does that mean there's still two lines running down where that new line is, the new 10-inch line is from
Yeah.
15 years ago? Are there still two lines running down?
I think the issues we've been having at Caldwell are a line that runs south.
Well, then what the mayor's asking is it from Montgomery to Jackson, are there still two water lines, functional water lines in that street?
My understanding is everything was consolidated.
To the one, to the
Right.
10-inch
Okay.
line?
Yeah, I think we, hopefully we picked it up. It's hard to see on this, but if you came up here and looked, you could see two existing from Jackson to City Hall, and then I agree, I think one, it was
New line
consolidated
replacement.
into a 10.
Okay, well, only reason I was concerned is because there've been times when we found lines we didn't know we had, and I just want to make sure we aren't putting ourselves back in that same position 15 years from now. Somebody's going to go, wait, what? So, okay, thank
And
you.
there may be an old line there, but the services, I think, were all transferred to
Yeah,
that 10-inch.
okay.
So it would just be dead.
You wouldn't pull an old line up, you just put the new line down?
Cap it.
Cap it.
Cap it, and transfer the services.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to restate a lot of what I did, but on the water main side, we did consolidate, as we were just discussing, into a single main, just to reduce cost, but also meet demand. Standardized materials due to the supply chain issues, but also to coordinate with the purchasing, annual purchasing that Starkville Utilities does, so everything's standardized based around that. And then we wanted to coordinate the work with the Main Street streetscape project in that area. So one thing, trying to be mindful with what's going to happen there. I don't want to get into the details, but if you needed to come back and maintain the water line, we didn't want you to have to come in and cut into pavers and try to reset everything to fix something. So this is an example of what's out there now, and these little circles are just valve locations in the middle of the intersection. And we've tried to, where typically we might put a valve, touchscreen, typically we might put a valve on each side of a T, but we pulled those outside of the intersections to try to, I guess, make maintenance a little easier and sustain those, all those pavers. Any questions on the water? I was going to bounce this very soon. On the sewer side, again, old infrastructure, we focus more on just fixing hot spots and issues where there's recurring problems. A lot of those, again, are behind the buildings. Here's an example. If you went behind, on the north side of Main Street, just walk behind, you got water meters, manholes, AC units sitting on top of them, grease traps, all that. So we're trying to pull some stuff a little bit away from the buildings and put clean outs and consolidate services into single manholes that are serviceable. Another condition that you might notice all around Starkville, these small manholes where relative to that shovel size, it's the same width, but full manholes are quite a bit larger and more serviceable.
This is a junior manhole,
Junior
that's what they call them.
manholes,
Okay.
That's right. Trying to identify those in this area of interest and replace those with manholes that are serviceable. It's hard to get a CCTV camera or a flushing hose or a suction line in these little manholes. And take care of the problem. So let's remedy that too.
Is this particularly on Lafayette Street? Because that's where we've had issues with some,
Lafayette behind the cafe.
Right.
And you'll also see in that photograph, it's a little older, but old brick manholes will be replaced with modern.
That's the original.
Yes, sir.
That's the 1900, 1910.
We have better materials than that.
okay, all right. Anyone about sewer? Okay. Mary, you're up.
So we just wanted to touch a little bit on the communication plans that we have for this project, making sure that people are aware ahead of time what we're gonna be doing, expected impacts that they can have. And so we're having a public information meeting on November 17th downstairs in the courtroom. And we have received a list of email addresses from Paige at Main Street to go ahead and inform these people ahead of time if they want to be there, and then also getting a public notice out for anyone else that's interested that wants to attend and get whatever information they can. At the same meeting, they'll be able to provide their email addresses to us for the email address we set for the project, which is downtownwater@starkville.com. Anybody that wants to be included on any information for the project will be able to receive those emails as we send them out. And then additionally, as the project goes on, that anyone that has any issues, they can send it to there immediately and get a response, as opposed to who do I need to talk to, where can I get any information?
Okay, when you have those sent out, would you make sure that all the board and myself are involved in that, or on that email list? Okay, thank you.
So currently, what we're looking at for our project timeline is next Tuesday, approval to advertise the project. And then the public information meeting would be November 17th. We were looking to open bids on December 6th, which is also the day of a board meeting, so it'd be a really quick turnaround on opening, reviewing, and getting a contract awarded that night. Planning to start construction in January. As Kirk said, we've looked at, the availability of materials to hope to mitigate that and hope to be able to start in January, and then we're looking at about an 8-month construction timeline. The biggest impact we think that we're gonna have during the project, once it starts, is just gonna be to traffic. Like Kurt said, minimal impacts on the sidewalk for Main Street due to not many services being connected in the front. But lane closures, detours, things of that nature, we're looking at being the biggest impact.
Okay, are we staggering? How are we doing that?
We will coordinate with the contractor to make sure that this is least disruptive as possible.
And then our next coordination effort with the contractor is also to do these service transfers and changeovers that we discussed on off hours. So first thing in the morning, last thing in the afternoon, not while they're trying to conduct business during the day, to minimize those impacts as well.
Okay. All right, any questions about any of that?
I just wanted to thank the board for y'all's support of this project. I mean, this is a substantial project. It's about $2.5 billion that we're investing in this infrastructure. It's very old, very antiquated. I think it's a priority for everybody, and just really wanted to publicly thank you guys.
Okay, we're gonna have to publicly thank all the businesses too. The patience is gonna be the key in this, it truly is. All right, any questions before we let them go and move to the next item, which is Kimley Horn, to kind of follow up on how that's gonna flow in right behind this?
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, that's right. So, they get all their utilities in, and then the plan is for us to come right in behind them, a couple months after they finish construction on Main Street and begin construction on these improvements for the streetscape. And so where we are within that process of getting to that point of being able to bid and construct the project, we're sort of tailing on the end of our schematic design phase. This meeting is sort of the denoter between schematic design and design development. And at this point, what we've done is we've really taken the layout that you approved at the board meeting prior and worked from the curb line towards the building face to really finalize, not finalize, but to start to make recommendations for what kind of materials are within there, what are the proper dimensions for steps and for these seating areas, really fine tuning the people spaces. The roadway layout and everything is the same as was previously approved, but this is the next level of detail. And so this is just a quick run through of our schematic design set. This includes demolition plans. And the key thing to note here is that between really City Hall and Jackson, it's gonna be a complete overhaul from building face to building face, with the exception of existing traffic signals and the equipment associated with those. But all your sidewalks, the roadway, curb and gutter, everything else is gonna be removed and replaced. So it's completely transformational, particularly in the downtown zone between Jackson and City Hall. Demolition isn't quite as invasive once you get past Jackson. It's really just within the right of way. You'll start to see curb lines move, sidewalks will extend to become wider. But then at this Montgomery intersection, the existing traffic signal that's out there, wood poles, span wires going across, those will actually come down and be replaced with new mast arm poles to match what is at the other three intersections along the corridor. So I know I'm moving quickly. If I need to slow down at any point, just holler at me. But the big piece of the schematic design phase was really starting to look at material recommendations and placement. And so this hatching that you see here is all these brick pavers, these concrete pavers that Henry's torn out samples of. And so this zone, really from the Washington or D.L. Connor intersection all the way to here at City Hall, that's going to be a flush condition. So it becomes an event space that's denoted with bollards along the side, banding for ADA detectable warnings, and just to denote the actual roadway. But all of this space with that darker gray hatching is brick paver. So it really keys this up as a premier event space and really the jewel of the end of Main Street in front of City Hall. There's also some renovations in front of City Hall Plaza itself. So where right now it's just a concrete plaza, we're looking at breaking it up with additional landscapes and trees on the south side of that, so you actually get some shade and create more of a space for people. The intersection itself is a repeat of the concrete pavers, but in this situation, where the rest of the field may be a blend of 3 different colors, we're going to start to pull out single colors to create a almost a barn quilt pattern. So keeping in line with some of the other things in Octavia County and Starkville specifically, taking some inspiration from that barn quilt pattern and giving a subtle nod to it within the intersection itself. The streetscape, once you get past Washington, is going to become really more the standard downtown streetscape. And so from building face inward, what you have is about a 3-foot landing zone for the building. And so what that does, it gives us a nice clean line to pick up the sidewalk. But then it also differentiates between a zone where a business could maybe set up a sandwich board or a sale rack or anything like that and not feel like it's in the middle of the sidewalk. So that zone would be like an exposed aggregate concrete, and we'll see photos of that here in just a minute. But you would actually have some texture. It's a little more of a decorative pavement type. That would be repeated in key points of the intersections where we want to create gathering spaces for outdoor displays or dining. But then the bulk of your sidewalk space is just going to be a standard room finished concrete like you would see on any other sidewalk. The design there is really picked up with the joint spacing and how it's laid out in that regard. But once you get from the sidewalk and move again towards the roadway, that gives you a 5-foot furnishing zone. So we call it the furnishing zone because that's a great spot for benches, bike racks, trash receptacles. That's where all of those elements will be placed. That's also where street trees would be planted. And with those street trees, we're including underground infrastructure to ensure the proper growth of those trees, that they have the adequate space for root growth so that you don't end up with stunted trees that never really provide you with the shade that they're intended to. If we move towards the Lafayette intersection, this is another premier intersection where you're coming up from 182 and this becomes a gateway of sorts. So it's a repeat of the barn quilt idea, just with a different pattern. So it's sort of keeping in line with that scavenger hunt that Oktibbeha County has.
Anybody see tic-tac-toe in that?
Had a whoppage odd angle.
But at each of the four corners of the intersection, again, trying to provide a space for people. That was really the driving factor behind this whole project, was how do we make Main Street a place for people to go and hang out? And so within each one of these corners, we've got, again, that exposed aggregate spot where it's super flexible. We can use movable planters to help define an edge if a restaurant wants to set up for outdoor dining. In front of the partnership and the opposing corner, providing outdoor shade structures so that it's just a more comfortable seating environment. And again, flexible, so that as you want to program events like Bulldog Bash, or if a tenant wants to take use of a space for a time period, they can set it up the way that they would prefer. Here between Lafayette and Jackson, this is where we're continuing with some grade change between the roadway and the pedestrian zone. And so in order to do that, we're still maintaining a retaining wall so that as you come in from parking, you would step out of your vehicle and onto a 3-foot landing zone that runs the whole length. But then we have steps intermittent adjacent to each one of the street trees that gets you up to the pedestrian and building front level. In between the street trees, at that elevated level, we have bump outs where you could set up with cafe tables and chairs, potentially have a drink rail on top to take your Go Cup outside and hang out for any sort of special event that's happening in Main Street. That would have a railing coming up from the stairs that would be consistent with the guardrail at the top, the handrail for the stairs, and then the drink rail. Once we get to the Jackson intersection, this is where the character starts to change a little bit, because this is sort of the gateway into downtown, but then the overall streetscape character changes, and the section does as well, as you'll remember from the layout approval. And so the roadway still narrows up in most places. We're going to parallel parking for the remainder of this section, but we still maintain similar materials with the concrete sidewalk and then a 5-foot furnishing zone for the street trees and site furnishings. And that really helps to tie the whole corridor together, not just from downtown aspect, but really all the way to the intersection here at Montgomery. So one of the big things that this project is going to do is take away the dedicated right turn lane and consolidate it with the through movement. And what that does is it helps to give us some more space for pedestrians, but it also helps to align the drive lanes. And so right now, you'll probably be familiar with this skew where if you're traveling east, you have to almost turn and come down to continue that eastward travel. This starts to line everything up much more cleanly to where you're not making that chicane movement. Again, at this intersection, new mast arm signals to clean up all the utilities in front. And then here at the library, looking at an opportunity to include the same pavers to create this plaza reading garden space that would be utilized by the library. So that gets us through really the high-level schematic design. And I think what we would want to focus on for the remainder of the time that I have with you are some of these material selections. So this starts to give you an idea of what we're looking at from a palette standpoint with the different kinds of concrete, the brick pavers that we're wanting to use, and trying to pull out specific colors that could be used for each one of those patterns. Detectable warning pavers, this is just if you are coming to an intersection and you're visually impaired, these have the little nodules on them so that you can feel that you're entering a vehicular zone. Handrails, keeping it something nice and simple that blends well to architecture along with new updates,
slightly more contemporary updates within the streetscape. So everything starts to mesh. Drink rails for leaning and setting a drink, similar to you would maybe see at an athletic facility, a venue like that. And then retaining walls and seat walls, trying to think through how all these materials interact and help define the space. From the site furnishing standpoint, this is mostly what's going to end up in that furnishing zone, as well as the specific people spaces at the intersections. And so overhead structures, steel, custom perforated panels up top. So we have control over what that pattern is, how it speaks to the rest of the design, including swings within that so that it becomes a really good destination for people, and you're not solely relying on seat walls or businesses to provide outdoor seating. Within those same spaces, there's the potential for movable furnishings that would be easily removed for special events like Bulldog Bash or whatever else is going on. So foldable, stackable, but at the same time, they're out there and able to be configured however you want it, and also offer a little pop-up color with some of these brighter tones. Keeping in line with materials and elements that were proposed for 182, a similar material selection really across the board for benches, trash receptacles, and bike racks. And then some of these movable planters that, again, are used to define space, but are on casters so that they can be adjusted accordingly. And then a key component of this is site lighting, really for the whole corridor. So looking at the typical pedestrian pole that's used from Montgomery all the way to City Hall. So it'd be sort of a double-sided, two-fixture pole system. But then downtown, it starts to alternate between this two-sided fixture to a single side on the sidewalk side. Then over the roadway, we would have this festoon lighting that would zigzag back and forth across the corridor to really help define the space and bring it down to that pedestrian scale, while still being able to include things like the banners for seasonal events and activities. Like I said, at the raised intersections, bollards would be used to really help define the vehicular zone from the pedestrian zone. Those and the radius of the intersection could be lit so that it further denotes that there's pedestrian crossings. The rest could just be a plain bollard with no light so that it's really serving more of a safety purpose. And then at the key intersections at Jackson, Lafayette, and Washington, looking at including some of these special lighting elements to really serve as almost a gateway for each one of those and help highlight just the overall aesthetics and opportunity for RGB color changing lights within it for, again, special events, seasonal considerations, etc. And then we get into the landscape plan. The high level view of this is that we're trying to take a similar palette as to what's proposed for 182 and just bring it up the hill to Main Street. The caveat being that we'd like to bring in a little more interest, a little more color, since this will be such a destination. We want the aesthetics to really match up with that. And so I've sped through this. That's really the high-level overview of where we are with schematic design. We have gone through another cost estimate exercise. We're still right in line with where we were previously, just under $10 million. And so we're feeling pretty good about the overall construction budget and are happy to keep moving forward on it.
And there's still a 10% contingency in there, so I was smiling big when he said that the numbers were still the same, because,
I'm shocked.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Anyone, any questions? Mr. Ham?
Where are the funds coming from to pay for this?
Same place they were coming from last time we talked about it. We've got about
We're about to go out to bid pretty
Yeah,
soon.
we've got about 4.5 million that's been committed from various sources, OCEDA, Main Street, the state, and we've got 2 million in appropriations that, hoping that that will be signed into law here not too soon. We're in that appropriations bill from the feds, so that's about half of it. And my understanding is that Representative Robertson and Senator Williams are going to seek some more money for us at this next legislative session. And hopefully, as we whittle it down further and further, we will have very little left that we're going to have to cover, but that's kind of where we are.
When we bid the project before we had money in hand to do the project? I mean, would we bid a $10 million, I guess I assume it'd be a general contractor and $10 million job. Would we bid all of that at one time without having that money, on hand to pay for it?
Well, we're not
Or
going
have sources and have it lined up?
sources, there you go, sources. Well, that will be the question for the board, and I think Alderman Sistrunk had said we have some bonding opportunities. We also are getting ARPA money for the water part of this. What part of this was water and sewer?
So of the 10 million number that we were talking about, a million of that is water.
So that takes another million off of that, because we're anticipating that our ARPA funds are going to be matching the Main Street and the Bill Grant water projects were a part of that. So that still nibbles away at it yet further. But I think that's where we are in terms of where we're going to get it. Whatever remaining 2 or 3, and hopefully as little as possible, we'll have an opportunity to bond it.
Well, I know we went through a budget process, and I know that with these bonds, general obligation bonds, debts paid, that opens up other opportunities. But I mean, I think taxpayers and the board needs to know specifically how we're going to fund that $2 or $3 million on the tail end of it, and where that money's coming from, and if there's going to be a required tax, an abnormal tax increase to do that. We did, because we put a mill down on the Bill Grant thing to service the debt on bonds to finish up or pay our 25% or 20% of that project.
It's now 50%.
And that's how things.
Yeah.
That's how things can get it more expensive. We started with a $15 million project on 182, and it's now. And of course, a lot of ARPA money is going to water and sewer and stormwater, but that's now a $26 million on its way up, $26 million project. So costs have gone up during post-pandemic with all the supply, the stuff that's made that costs go up, transportation, fuel, all that kind of stuff. But that concerns me that we won't know if we get a bid, till we bid it and get the prices back. I still have some concerns about the functionality of downtown. I know I sound like a broken record on this, but from the get-go, the board did not have input on this. I see issues with squeezing the streets up. When I come to meetings, I park on the side of the O'Connor, on the side of Washington Street. When I turn to turn and park in that 45 parking place on the side street, I have to go across in the other lane. I've got a pickup truck, not as big as yours, but it's a regular size pickup. But I have to go across the lane and park in order to angle in to park. And when I back out, invariably I'm pulling across the lane with somebody coming up from the police department, and it's an issue. That's a squeezed up street. We're not to that extent, but we're about to do that on Main Street. I hope everybody understands that we're about to squeeze these streets, Main Streets, by 10 feet, 5 on each side, to make a 20-foot wide sidewalk. And it's going to be beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. It's going to have all those elements to it. But when we get through, will it still have the function where someone can get in and out of a parking place? When we get to Lafayette and Main, if you want to make a left turn, there's not going to be a turn lane there anymore. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. If there's nobody coming, you'll make a left turn. If there is, and you'll stop. And when you stop, cars behind you are going to stop. And when cars behind you should stop, the people that are pulled into those parking places from the business are not going to back out. They're going to back out when all that clears out. And what we have right now is I know the gentleman from Kimmy Horn, and I know that they're doing great work, and I've seen some of their work. I have a son that lives in Midtown Memphis, and I've seen that project they're just finishing up on Highland Avenue. It is gorgeous. It's beautiful. So I know what kind of work that the engineering firm does, design, wise and everything. But the function of this, after we get through with it, and after we spend $10 million, may be more congestion the inability to make turns at our main intersection in town. And that may more than offset all of the aesthetics that we're going to enjoy with wider sidewalks and the plantings and sidewalk. I'm all for that. My wife did. I like that kind of stuff. But so I'm all for the aesthetics for it. I just don't want us to go in and do something to the function of downtown. I spend time uptown. Maybe I go to a coffee shop or something, and I see those Cisco trucks and stuff that pull in, or UPS trucks, and they straddle the middle, and they've done that for 100 years, straddle the middle of the street uptown. They pull their dollies out, they go in as the service of restaurant or business, come back out and they're gone. Now what we're gonna do now is we're gonna put them on side streets. Make those tractor trailers and stuff park on a side street. Now when they park on a side street, I'm not worried so much about the inconvenience to the Cisco guy, but what'll happen is 3 or 4 parking places got to come out for that Cisco trucks to have a place to park. And I guess what I'm saying is, I've never thought downtown didn't function. I never thought it was broken. It's not that we can't make improvements to it. I want to make improvements to it. I like the idea of brick streets and where we can do things to improve the aesthetics. Let's do it. At the same time, by squeezing in the streets, it's going to be more difficult to park, getting in and out. Discounting the fact you don't have a turn lane, and then you don't have turn lanes, and if you get busy, like we're about to get busy today, and if on ball game weekends, we'll have people that street just be like this. And when we do, I mean, my experience with shopping stuff is that if places get to where I can't park and I can't get in a place and can't do it, if I can't, I'll try it a couple of times and I'm out. I'm gonna go somewhere else. And that's what we don't want to do in the quest to make downtown walkable and beautiful and all of that. I don't want us to disrupt the function, and it functions pretty well right now. It's not that we couldn't tweak some of that. It's not we couldn't put a brick the whole street. I know towns that, I'm surprised Starkville doesn't have brick streets. But brick, if they're not bricks, bricks, put brick all the way. Do beautiful things. At the same time, maintain turn lanes. I had suggested after we started the project, let's make it a one-way. If we're going to take out turn lanes, let's make it one-way, because in Athens, Georgia, where they did this, and we sent somebody over to look at it, they turned the street from two-way to one-way, which eliminates any possibility of somebody getting caught and traffic backing up with oncoming cars and things. But that wasn't considered. I guess what I'm saying is, for whatever this is going to cost, $10 million or 9 or 11 or whatever like that, I don't want us to get through with it and then the function of it from a standpoint of car traffic downtown get congested to the point where businesses, it'll hurt business. I want us to have, and another thing too is I just don't want us to hurt our business or our function downtown, and I'm afraid we may be going headlong into that. And I know there's been traffic studies by Kimley Horn, by their engineers over in Birmingham to say that this wouldn't happen. But my experience has been, I've known some places that spend a lot of money doing something similar to this, and it didn't work out afterwards. They spent a lot of money, and it inhibited business, and that's just what I don't want to do. I've always wanted us to kind of compromise and look at this in parcels and maybe components and things, and that's never been brought up before the board. It's never been put before the board to be able to do that. We've never had any input on this.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to back off of that, Alderman Beatty, because we have talked about this any number of times. There have been opportunities for everybody to say everything. They looked at your one-way concept, did you not?
We studied the traffic flow and what that would do. There was a paragraph in the report.
Yeah. So all of this has been looked at, and we've all sat through and listened before, and we understand your concerns, but I think the board has moved forward, understanding that you do have those concerns. I don't think we've discounted it. I think we have listened to you, and unless the board wants to do another reconsideration, I believe that your concerns were taken into account, but decided to move forward.
Mayor, I can remember when I first came on this board, the Main Street overlays were down in the middle of a 5-year project, because that's the priority was not even top priority to get our main. 3 years ago, the streets were as bad as they are now, and all that was not quite almost as bad. So there was no priority on even overlaying the streets at that time, like any top priority. And now, not only we've gone up, toward a $10 million project to completely, as some would say, transform downtown. and maybe our downtown needs pavement, maybe it needs maybe a brick middle of the center of the street or something. Maybe we need to continue to have turn lanes at Lafayette and Main, and no one ever, once this project got going, and there was never any really serious consideration of that.
There was absolutely serious consider. All right, I've got a board sitting here. I've got 4 other members of the board sitting here, and tell me if y'all felt like y'all did not have an opportunity to talk about it and say things about it and make decisions about it. Anybody feel like you didn't?
I think what we're dealing with is potentially a difference of opinion about what the best way forward is. And I think anytime you have 7 people, you're going to have maybe as many as 7 different opinions about what the best way forward is. I'm okay with what we're doing downtown, and I've seen some downtowns that made major gaffes in how they went about these things. And I'd like to, I have 2 questions I wanted to ask. The idea of the one-way street. People will not like that if we tried to make it one way, but there's nothing that keeps us from, at some point in the future, if we need to, converting it to a one-way street, is there? There's
It really the
striping is that so if it becomes bogged down to the point that a one-way street is the solution, then we deal with that. And what are the lane widths on Main Street in this plan?
They're primarily 13 feet,
Okay.
which, we go down as narrow as 11
And,
usually.
and I had the occasion this past week to talk to somebody from a different firm out of Atlanta who does streetscapes, and he said that in Atlanta, that they designed their streets for 11 feet, and that 13 feet was, by their standards, generous. So I think change is hard, and we all anticipate problems, and until we get into it, it's sometimes difficult to know exactly what's going to be a problem and what's just going to be different. I think some of the issues that you talk about turning onto Lafayette can be addressed by making those first few parking spaces compact cars only. The reason you have to swing around is because Alderman Brooks is parked, and the mayor have parked their big trucks there. So if they were smaller, regular-sized cars, if Alderman Rupp had parked there, you wouldn't have as much difficulty doing that. So I think there's some things that we can do, and I think some of this we'll just have to feel our way through as we get the project to the finish line.
Well, my point in particular is that we have had numerous conversations. They've made multiple presentations to us on this. The board has voted on this, and I understand that that you're not in agreement, and I get that. But I do think the board has spoken, and I think it's time for us to go ahead and move forward.
Mayor, are we moving forward with this because we perceive it as an issue that we need to make, but some of this that's causing issues with people shopping and commerce and people free flow of traffic or something, that we would spend $10 million downtown? Because I've looked at other college towns, and that street in Athens, Georgia, that we're talking about copying, it's not their main street. It's a second or third street north of their main street. Auburn, Alabama's not squeezed. They still have what we have, the same width and 45-degree parking. Tuscaloosa, Alabama, we're more like Tuscaloosa than we are these others, because our campus doesn't come right to the middle of town. And Tuscaloosa has 4 lanes of traffic, and then they have parking, and they have turn lanes. And we're undoing stuff that helps traffic flow, like taking out parking lanes on the project that Kenny Horn's done in Memphis, the middle of Memphis, going right from Central down to the University of Memphis campus, Highland Avenue. That's a 4-lane street. They have calmed traffic with landscaping. They've done sidewalk work where it needed to be done, and they left their turn lanes in. And I don't know why we couldn't have incorporated something beautiful and something that was going to do what you wanted to do as a streetscape, and still done something, incorporated something like some of that. That's part of it, and the other part of it is the paying for it. And I don't want us to get up here and we'll get to $2 or $3 million short. And because we had a budget process last fall. I'm just saying, putting up that we labored through a budget process, and one side wanted to add tax, and the other side didn't want to add tax and stuff. And it's now we're gonna have $2.5–3 million next year discretionary money coming, I guess, coming from bonds or something that we you know, we can spend on a downtown project. I mean, I guess I have concerns with that. I also have concerns with the design. And I may be the only person on the board with that, but when I leave here and drive down Main Street, I see a functioning downtown that needs some pavement and needs maybe some brick aesthetics or something like that. But a dramatic, radical downtown, I mean, redo with wider sidewalks and skinnier streets and no turn lanes and things, I just don't see that. But anyway,
Okay.
I know I'm the minority on that.
All right, well, thank you. I think we have had another rather full discussion, so with that, thank you, guys, appreciate you. And we have brick pavers for everybody to look at if they want to. I think there's some more in the box over there, so let's see if we can.
It's something we like to call brick.
Brick pavers, yes. All right, so we can move with our agenda. We have 2 sets of minutes. Mr. Latimer, how are we on those? Ready to roll. Are we good with consent on those 2 sets of minutes? All right, thank you. Comments, I think we have some introductions. Mr. Ashford is somewhere around here, or not. I believe we have some introductions to be made. Did we? Okay, all right, so we will have some introductions, and we can put those on there. Lisa, if you would add that, just so we'll know that we've got them. Anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda, at least as it relates to comments or introductions? Or comments from either party? None? Okay. We've got 2 public appearances. One is for Students for a Sustainable Campus. They have a list of concerns that they would like to bring to the board, and so they're going to do that under public appearances. We have another, I have spoken with Pastor Laughlin, and he wants to come be on the record about not wanting a roundabout in front of their church there, which I don't think was ever necessarily planned for there, and I explained that to him.
He
So-
emailed me and I told him that I had
Yeah.
not seen any of that.
Nope, no, but he wanted to come be on the record. I told him he was certainly welcome to do so. So I think he's going to get us a letter and come have a public appearance. Then we have 2 public hearings. One of them is a variance on stormwater requirements. Mr. Havlin, would you give us just a brief?
Yes, that was the first one, the very stormwater requirements for Oval Golf. They're building on site on Industrial Park Road. It's very wooded. They're trying to preserve the woods as much as possible in this phase, and they're requesting that they don't have to do any stormwater mitigation at this time. But the condition that was recommended for approval of Board of Justice Appeals is that if they do increase the building of the parking board, then we have to come back for stormwater.
Okay.
And
that
they're
is
not
because-
increasing the building now, right? They're just-
Not now.
They're staying in the same
In the
footprint.
parking lot is gravel
Yeah.
that they're increasing.
Lots of permeable surface.
Yes.
And lots of trees to take up that excess water, so.
Yep. Okay, and then the second one?
And the second one is for a fireplace that was built in Adelaide. The fireplace was built within the side setback for an accessory structure, and that was the Board of Justice Appeal, and they recommended approval with one condition.
Okay, all right, so we will obviously be having public hearings on those. And I believe we've finally gotten the Humane Society issue taken care of. We've got 2 items on the agenda that Mr. Latimer has recommended we separate. One is a management agreement that we approved earlier this year, but they were extending it and changing one of the terms to be not a convenience for us to terminate, but for a cause. And so that allows that to go in line with the second item on the agenda, which is the long-term lease of a 2 ± acres for expansion that the airport board has looked at and agreed to. So there's possibility for consent for those? All right.
Can I ask,
Yeah, of course.
did you look at the FAA's position on any kind of a structure that's built on that property? Because
Rodney's been looking at that. I
Okay.
didn't personally do it, but I know we've worked with Rodney on mapping for this and to make sure it met the FAA specs. And I'll triple check with Rodney. But as of right now, I don't know of any prohibitions.
Okay.
It shouldn't be based on the fact that those other buildings are right there in that footprint.
I was just doing a little bit of work on it. It seems like that they require that improvement come back to the
To them.
To the lessor.
Yes, yeah, we've got it as a contingent on the FAA's approval.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's right. And it's just a 20-year lease that
Right.
we're keeping the property.
That's right.
It's not a rent to own.
Yeah, that's what I understand. And the building, if something happened to the building, does come back to the city.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Say that clear.
Yeah, we've got a really good, I think a good management, not management agreement, but a good lease arrangement.
And that was part of the sticking point because of the grant funds that are involved. So I have to ask, is the Humane Society's aware of the contract?
Yep.
They're good with it?
Had that conversation,
Yay.
yeah, had that conversation with Michelle.
Great.
And
Great.
Rick Welch. So,
Great.
okay.
Thank you.
And the third item here is a little bit of us trying to be good neighbors. As y'all know, the media has taken it up on numerous occasions, and all over the area where Golden Triangle Waste Management is serving. It's Oktibbeha County, Lowndes County, I think City of Columbus, and then maybe Webster County, I think. Yeah, Webster County, thank you. They are having trouble with trucks, and so they have asked if we would be willing to help. And so what Chris has drafted is an interlocal agreement to allow us to help them on Wednesdays, which are our off days, and allow us to use a couple of trucks. There's Mr. Smiley back there, thank you. Use a couple of trucks, and we're trying to iron out what they need. We don't know exactly yet, but we're certainly not going to sell ourselves short in doing this, because our pickup days are obviously Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays. But this allows us to be a good neighbor and help them out, at least on a temporary basis. And I have put in there that it would be for 2 months at a rate that Mr. Smiley calculated. And then at the end of that 2 months, if they're still in need of us, then we will probably reevaluate that cost associated with what would become wear and tear on the trucks and associated costs, so that we're not selling ourselves short, even though we do want to be a good neighbor. So that's what this is about.
Will the trucks be driven by our people?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We have nothing to do with Golden Triangle Waste. We are contracted with the county, or the interlocal is with the county, not with Golden Triangle. Yes, sir.
Say if something happened to our trucks, would they bear the cost with us?
Well, that would be, well, that's a liability issue. We've got the insurance associated with that, follows our trucks and follows our people. So I would say our insurance carrier would take care of that.
Does our insurance carrier know we're about to?
Yes,
trucks go out?
yes.
I
We've,
contacted the property insurance and the liability.
yes,
They okay with it?
yeah.
So, Smiley, you okay with this?
Yes, I'm fine.
And we will obviously not do this on a long-term basis, but we're trying to be helpful.
Consent.
Okay, Supervisors Howard and Supervisor Trainer were both the ones who reached out. And so I don't know how many routes, but we will try to be helpful. So we're good with that?
Okay. With
All right.
Comfortable with being made whole on all this.
Yes, well, I mean, and that's the reason we're such a short term. We'll evaluate it at the end of that term, because I'm not sure we calculated for, again, wear and tear, the expectation of wear and tear, and whatever elements may come to us on this. So, and we have here a surprise to me. I haven't seen this one. Consideration of curbside recycling. I assume Alderman Beatty, you put this on there?
I did.
Okay. Would you like to carry the weight on this?
I would. I think the time has come for us to consider at least not a mandatory, but a buy-in curbside recycling program, City of Starkville. Mr. Smiley said our collection at our collection sites volume and stuff has done well and increased. I think there is demand, an appetite for this, and probably the people who would buy in or opt into this would be willing to pay a monthly fee, sign up and pay that. The city has some receptacles that we purchased a number of years ago, that are recycling receptacles that probably people could purchase. We would offer for people to buy that would be roll-off type containers that our truck would come by and dump automatically. We wouldn't recycle any. The proposal things kind of being talked about would be recycling just what we're recycling now. Just do it at twice a month pickup on a Wednesday, every other week, and one of them be a cardboard pickup, the other one be the steel and aluminum cans and the paper pickup. And there's actually markets for that. We would probably take the cardboard, or propose would be to take the cardboard straight to the recycling facility. The other stuff, if we can sort it or something, there's probably markets for it for us to sell this, to compact it and sell it. This is something that we can do. The college group is coming Tuesday night. Young people are going to tell us, and they're correct, we're the only town in the Southeastern Conference host town, or city, that does not have curbside recycling. We're the only progressive city, and I consider us progressive city. We're the only progressive city I know that does curbside recycling. Most mandatory, they charge a fee, and it's part of your bill every month. And you've got 2 containers they issue to you, and one of them's garbage and one's recycling, and you recycle, or it's a use or lose kind of thing. But this wouldn't be a charge everybody a fee. This would be an opt-in, a buy-in. People that want to do this sign up for it, and we look to see what we can, what we've got potentially charge per month to make our cost, to make this thing break even, where we don't have to subsidize from the garbage side, to make it work. But I think there are people in town, there's an appetite for it, demand for it, I don't use the word appetite, but that demand for it, and I think people would pay, the people that'll sign up for this would pay a reasonable amount to be able to have their recycle picked up twice a month.
Do you have a proposed fee that you're looking at?
Not yet, we gotta get the numbers right on that.
Well, as you're looking at that, there has been a group here in town that did a curbside pickup, a commercial business that did a curbside pickup. And it was a subscription service, and it was $12 a month. And they are no longer in business here in town. So I would say that your subscription service, that's a pretty good benchmark, that your subscription service is going to need to be $12 and up.
With the exception of one thing, they gotta make a profit, we don't have to make a profit.
We've got to cover personnel costs that they don't have to cover with benefits and that sort of thing. So we pay 17% of personnel costs that they don't have to cover. So I don't think they're making a 50% profit. I doubt they're making a 10% profit. Whatever they're making was not sufficient for them to stay in business. So I would say absolutely something to look at, but make sure that we are coming up with a fee that does not harm sanitation service. They don't have the margin to absorb any of that cost. So and I'm guessing that number's going to be $12 to $15.
We won't know, we run the numbers to see what's gonna cost to run our trucks and our labor
And these people were running with a pickup truck, not a garbage truck.
Here's what we run into,
Pickup
and
truck.
this is part of, and I
Which
think
is cheaper.
Here's what we run into, and this is realistic, but this what we run into, is instead of trying to find a way to make this work, we look for every way not to make this work. And the city of Oxford, Mississippi, curbside recycles. They don't ask people if they want to pay that $4 a month. They put it on the garbage bill, and you either recycle or you lose the $4 per month. They don't ask. The city of Ridgeland has a $5 fee per month, mandatory fee per month. They don't ask you whether you want it. It's a use it or lose it. And so I'm not proposing. I'm proposing we try to do a little preliminary work and see how many people would be interested in doing this. Figure out if we can charge that people will pay a fee for this to be able to be done, to give somebody the option to have, and for our city to have a curbside recycling program.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, let's be sure that we set a fee that is appropriate. In Oxford and Ridgeland, that $4 to $5 fee is on every residential customer.
Absolutely.
And here in Starkville, if we don't want to go that route and we want to use an opt-in rate, we've got to realize that what those opt-in people are going to have to pay is significantly more than $4 or $5. So I'm back to that $12, $15 a month. There's a number there, and it's substantially more than $4 to $5 for an opt-in program.
We're looking to do things that will increase recycling in the city of Starkville, and this is a way for us to make one further step. I'd love to go back. I mean, I'd be for charging a fee and mandatory fee and putting it on and letting everybody, decide if they're going to recycle or not. But we're going to have a recycling program. This is a no-bag program. This is a container program. We've got some containers. There's a little bit of money left over in this MDEQ grant that we had last year that probably can be used to purchase containers or something. For the customer, the homeowner buys the thing, and then they charge so much per month. We'll see. We'll see how much demand there is for this type of thing. But it's something that potentially we want to offer people who want to curbside recycle.
So how do you see this? This says consideration of curbside recycling. What is it you want from the board on this particular?
I would educate the board. I mean, just information stuff to the board about what I would like to do as far as looking to see if this is possible. I mean, when we put back curbside recycling 3 years ago, it was like pulling teeth. I mean, it's hard to do. I mean, it was just, nobody said, hey, let's do it. Let's have a recycling program for the city of Starkville. We looked for every way in the world not to recycle. And I can tell you, lead on this and personally involved in it, and I can tell you it was hard to do just to get a recycling collection site back at the sanitation department. And so, I mean, I know there's not going to be any consensus up here much for doing anything unless we can show that it's not going to cost the city to start with a bunch of money. But I would say this, we as a city ought to do better than that. We ought to recycle because it's the right thing to do. And I just, and not look for every way in the world not to do it. And when I got here, when I came on board, we were getting out of the recycling business with no idea or any inclination to get back into the recycling business. That's not right. I got a son who lives in Memphis. He got 2 containers. One of them's garbage, and one of them's recycling. And one day he puts out his garbage, the other day he puts out his recycling. I mean, everybody recycles, and everybody makes the effort to do that, and we should. And the progression beyond this collection site at the sanitation department is some form of a curbside recycling program for those people who want to pay that money to do that, if we can afford to do it. And that's the information I'll try to bring to you all in time.
Okay, so what you're wanting to do is just have, you're wanting to discuss this at the board meeting, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we can move on from that now because there's not an action item. You're wanting to just have that information provided for.
We won't have enough
Okay,
information.
all right. Okay, so the next is consideration of resolution authorizing issuance of the general obligation public improvement bonds. And this is the 15 million for parks. And this is our authorization period, or our, what is it, the referendum period has passed. And now this is the opportunity for us to consider that resolution for the issuance. So
And bond will be serviced on this out of hospitality tax money.
2%, 1%.
And Mayor, just to clarify,
Yes,
this is not the resolution directing issuance. This is
Right.
only step 2 in the process, which closes out the protest period.
Right.
You guys will make a decision sometime down the line about whether or not to direct issuance.
Okay.
Right, this is correct. Thank you. Step 2, that's good. Step 2 versus step 3.
They've been advertised in the paper.
Yes.
This closes out the protest period.
And there's
Okay.
not been any protest.
There's not.
Consent unless I hear someone protesting, which we will not do. Okay, under airport, we've got change 1 from Tabor on the grading excess dirt. This is out there where they're doing the new hangar. So this is just a dirt thing. Are you, okay, all right, from the airport board standpoint, you're good with that? Consent for that? Okay, and the other one is a contract for delivering the hangar, including the door at George and Bryan Field.
This is not the erection now, this is just the bill, buying the building.
Yeah, okay, all right, consent for that one? All right. Next we have under engineering. Oh, there you are, okay. Mr. Williams is gonna walk us through a little bit of this, if there are any questions about it. This is the Bill Grant Engineering Services Contract with Neil Schaefer for the CE&I, and authorizing the mayor to execute any necessary paperwork. Any issues for that?
Consent.
Okay, consent on that. Consideration of the summary change order for the street improvement project. This is Garrett Road, this is the striping, and this is that additional element or additional strip of South Montgomery, are the major pieces of that are creating this amount, so,
Consent.
all right. Authorization to advertise for Cornerstone Boulevard entrance landscaping project. Consent for that one?
Consent.
Okay, and then advertising for bids for the Cornerstone pavement overlay.
Consent.
Thank you. Consideration of the change order for the Sportsplex drainage. We're getting down to the last. We're about done with all of the fields and getting the drainage done for all the Sportsplex soccer fields, which is
Consent.
wonderful. Consent for that? Okay. We have a claims docket. Then under the fire department, we've got travel to Savannah for River Training Weekend. Chief, where are you? There you are, back there. Anything in particular about this you want to make sure the board knows?
No, ma'am.
This is part of the training exercise for deep water?
It's for Swiftwater.
Swiftwater,
They
that's
also
what it
have
is.
some firefighting stuff they're gonna do in there as well, so it's a whole conglomeration of
Okay,
activities.
all right. Swiftwater, thank you. All right, consent on that one. HR, we've got hiring for firefighters and a certified firefighter.
Consent.
Okay, for there he is. Mr. Ashford just peeked around the corner. So is that the only hiring we've got?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. IT, parks, authorization to reject the bids, the container bids, concession concession trailer bids came in higher, and we believe that there's some opportunity out there once we get some more bids, and I think there's some folks that didn't understand our bidding process. So we're gonna reject those bids and re-advertise.
Consent.
All right, thank you. And under police, we have a Walmart community grant of $2,000. Approval to apply and accept if awarded.
Consent.
And then we have purchasing a LPR reader, 100% reimbursable. It's hard to turn those down. Consent for that. And the enterprise service for Vigilant Solutions, which is an LPR for hotspot grant purchase of a vehicle. So,
Consent.
all righty. Code enforcement, we've got 3 locations that we're looking at doing a 21-19-11. So we're trying to work our way through making better our streetscape by tearing down dilapidated buildings. So this is, and they all have gone through the process that, Mr. Latimer, you've looked at them?
So the documents have been submitted, and of course, this is just the call.
Right. No, I understand,
So
but-
the board can put them on consent if it's comfortable with the documents that are in the.
Right, and I think usually we rely on you when you put the belt and suspenders on. So you've looked at the documents and they look,
That they can go on consent.
okay, all right. Thank you. Consent for those. All righty, utilities. Mr. Kemp, anything in particular about your, where are you? There you are. About your items that you want us to know before we go through these? Okay, all right, so we have advertising for bids for the water and sewer replacement project, which we just heard about. Consent for that?
Consent.
Emergency authorization consistent with the presidential determination, which we have already done previously, and this is for Transarmor to rebuild transformers, so consent for that. Authorization to accept the lowest quote from Wren Body Works for a utility bed for Ford F-250, and then we got one right below it for a utility bed for the Ford F-350. Consent for those. Okay, authorization to advertise for Source of Supply. This is our every 6-month opportunity. We're putting it on for both 6 sets of 6 months, so we don't have to come back again with it, so consent for that. Authorization to declare excess culverts and other materials and components as surplus and advertise on Gov Deals. Thank you. And then renew assets essential for, and this is that agreement, we finally got it where we need it to be?
We did.
Okay, all right, consent for that one.
Consent.
Authorization for replacement of a vehicle in the amount of $40,000 to accept the lowest and best quote from Wren Body Works for the bed assembly. Anything about that, Mr.?
This is to replace a truck that we're having a lot of maintenance.
Okay,
issues
so it's a
with.
replacement vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And this is, we're getting the reason why the bed's a little higher is we have a service crane. This is used to pull pumps from our lift stations.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then last but not least, the best quote from Michael Box for the College View pump station removal. All right, okay. And there is no executive session, so we will work our way through this agenda on November the 1st. Thank you, everyone. Anyone have anything before we go? All right.
Everybody have a good weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Cotton District Arts Festival, and that's the only activity.